So, all right. Usually, usually I would have just canceled this lesson since most of the group is not there, but I want to do it today. So anyway, please try to be in the lesson 5 minutes before it starts, all right? So that I know that you're here and so on. And moreover, if you cannot come to the lesson, please tell about that, all right? So, okay. Today we're gonna talk about the assumptions. This is very important topic for your critical thinking part. So please let's mm, be careful about this topic. Try to understand it fully, and if you don't get something, just tell about that. So the assumption is something we take for granted or presuppose, okay? Often without being aware that we are doing so. So as you remember, the assumptions they are unstated beliefs of your author that must be true for the argument to work. Without them, the logic will be gone. So these are the invisible bridges between the evidence and the conclusion. So think about it like this way. Let's say this purple guy is your author, and we have some situation, some information on it, some evidence, some data, and reasoning, which comes to the brain of your author. And this brain is full of some bias, your author's experience, attitude to the topic, some knowledge about it, beliefs, and all of these things, they are assumptions of your author. So this information about the topic will go through the mind of your author, and then after that, your author makes thesis. Your author makes conclusion of it, some result, some recommendation of that. And the main thing here to understand is that all these things they will not be stated. Okay? They will be only in the mind of your author, not gonna be stated because your author believes that you share the same assumption, that you understand that he or she assumes these things because they believe this is very general, all right? So that's how the assumptions work. Of course, it will not be that easy actually in the argument, but anyway, the main function works this way, okay? Do you have any questions about that? Does make sense for you? Yeah?
Oh,
Okay, all right. So how do we find these assumptions? The easiest way is to look for something in the conclusion that wasn't mentioned in the premises. The premises is the reasons, the evidence, and so on. As you remember from the previous picture, here some stuff is going on in your author's mind, and then after that, it's very logic that if in the conclusion you find something that actually wasn't stated in the entire argument, some new information which was not explained by your author, then it's very likely that this thing which needs to explain this new information is going to be your assumption. So if the new idea shows up, the author is likely assuming the connection that wasn't stated directly to you. Okay, that's how you find these assumptions usually in the argument. The variations of assumptions they can be enormously big since all your authors are individuals with their own unique beliefs right in the mind. However, there are some standard types occurring in the exam which depends on the type of the argument. Here you can see a list of standard assumptions. There are quite many of them. I will not I will not read all of them because we will just go step by step. So get started with this type of arguments, cause problem, where no solution is introduced. Here you can see these two assumptions. Cause leads to the problem, and if there is no cause, then there is no problem. Alright? Quite simple. Like, that's very logic things, like cause leads to the problem, and if there is no cause, no problem. But the assumptions in the argument, they are not gonna be that obvious, okay? The interpretation of them to certain kinds may look general to you, like before. However, the Nuyat axiom is designed the way that it is not that easy to spot them. Only after proper analysis and explanation of the argument it becomes easy. So my advice is just to practice as much as possible to get a whole picture of the functions of the argument and the beauty of them. So, would you like to try it yourself or we can do it together? What do you think? Do you want to try it yourself or you want to do it together with me? What do you think, guys? We can do the first one together, I think. Let's do it. So, long hours and poor pay have become commonly accepted, but they are taking a heavy toll on life at home. Okay. Your author believes that long hours and poor pay they are quite bad, right? It is not a pretty picture. An economy where high levels of stress and anxiety are normal, where people get ill because they have lost control of their time, and where marriages are damaged and children suffer. So your author believes that long hours and poor pay is very bad thing, right? Because our families are damaged, children suffer, so on. Yet, yet, it is a situation that politicians advise us to applaud. So politicians stand as villains in this story. They praise strivers and hardworking people, not chilled out, caring moms and dads. Okay, the longer and harder we work, the more admirable we are supposed to be. So the political slogans have clearly been effective because you see in the first sentence your author said that these long hours in poor pay are commonly accepted now, but the resulting glorification of work has made us miserable. So what is the assumption? The thing is that if you read this argument pretty carefully, you see that this is something new happening in the conclusion. Your author didn't explain why we become miserable. Why we are miserable. What's the problem? Because throughout the whole argument your author was reasoning pretty well, right? Understanding all the points being made, but we are in the end miserable. So what's the problem? We have long hours and poor pay. We have the picture where we have high levels of stress, anxiety, people get ill, alright, we lose the control of their time, marriage damage, and children suffer because of these long hours and poor pay. While our politicians says that we are good, that we are strivers and hardworking people. That's right. We're hardworking people. Stress, anxiety, people get ill. Okay. We are not chilled out. But why are we carrying moms and dads? Carrying moms and dads and marriage damage and children suffer is not the synonym to each other, right? The more we work, the more admirable we are supposed to be, These slogans were effective. We were actually working right. We were actually strivers, not chilled out. But we were not carrying moms and dads because our marriages are being damaged and children suffer. So that's the contradiction, and this thing makes us miserable. You see? So whenever your author doesn't explain something, which appears in the conclusion or during the argument, then here you can find out the explanation of something your author didn't, and that explanation is gonna be your underlying assumption, something that is not being stated in the argument. Now, with these ideas, you go to the questions. First, most employees are not satisfied with their salary. Well, maybe, but your after already said poor pay. Okay, so your after couldn't assume this thing. It's not. It's not that important. Okay. Next one. Political slogans significantly affect people's everyday behavior. Is it about everyday behavior? No. It was about working behavior. Therefore, B is not the answer. C. Restructuring the working week will be beneficial for the economy. That's right, but your author didn't question the idea how we could have solved this problem, right? There is no solution being in demand. So C is not our option. It is solution of this problem. But we are asked to find assumption of this argument. D. Companies could afford shorter hours or better pay for their employees, and that's again what? That's again the solution of the problem. You see? That's the solution. C and D were solutions, but we need to find assumption and the final answer. People who experience less stress at work are better parents. That's gonna be your assumption. You see, that pretty explains why we become miserable. Because people who experience less stress at work are better parents. That's it. Doesn't make sense. You see that while we were doing analysis, we didn't come up with the 100% answer, right? We didn't come up with the exact assumption we need to find. But we come up with the assumption which is similar to this answer, have has the similar meaning that if there is no problem, then there will not be any issues. You see? Does make sense for you? Because if we put this sentence, moreover, remember that whenever you are putting your assumption to the argument will become more understandable. Okay? Easier, more understandable, less gaps, because there is a gap in this argument, which told you. The gap is why we become miserable. And this sentence, people who experience less stress at work are better parents, explains why we become miserable. Because we are the people here who work more, their marriage will be damaged, but your politician says that no, we will be carrying moms and dads, but we are in the end miserable because people experience less stress at work, better parents. People who experience more stress at work are less better parents. That's why the answer must be E. Okay? So, do you have any questions about this argument? Does it make sense for you?
I have a question. Like,
Yeah, go ahead.
we have to put answer to the like
Sorry.
text.
Could you tell it louder? I couldn't hear you.
My microphone is not working.
Yeah, your mic is
Yeah.
quite not working. Something like
Okay.
that.
Like if we put the answer to the like last sentence, it will
Mhm.
be easier to like understand or how?
No. Uh, you see, the main thing is let's imagine there are some reasoning of your author and some conclusion of your author. And most of the time, your assumptions are something between them. Okay? It is something between them.
Mhm.
But this assumption is not going to be stated. Your
Mm,
author jumps from reasoning to conclusion without stating this assumption. However, if this assumption is stated, like goes with this chain, then the argument's logic, that's, let me do it with different color, the logic of the argument will become better. That's the thing. So your assumption doesn't need to be like the last sentence, okay? It can be
mm,
between reasoning and conclusion.
okay.
So whenever you put that to your argument, the argument becomes stronger.
Okay. Sense.
All right. Okay. Other guys, do you have any other questions? Seems no. Okay then. Then let's continue. Let's continue then. Here is the explanation I already told you. Now you can try to do this one by yourself. I will give you for that, I think 3 minutes should be enough. Okay?
Okay.
3 minutes. When you're done, send your answers in the comments. If you have questions, also be free to ask. So, okay. Okay, there is one answer. Amazon, Nargis, what do you think? Okay, what What about you, Ramazan? So, all right. Time is up. Let's do it together. So, French golfer Jean Van de Velde appeared to throw away his big chance to win the Open Championship after giving up what could only be described as an unsavable lead. Alright. Most players would have been distraught to have victory snatched from them in such a way. But, interviewed afterwards, Van de Velde pointed pointed out that it was, after all, only a game. There are worse things in life, he said. And then your author appears like, really? Like it your author expresses some negative attitude towards his speech. In that point, you should question why your author has such an attitude. Because your author doesn't explain it later. So, it may be refreshing to hear a top competitor express such a philosophical attitude, but it also explains fully why the prize eluded him. So, how this philosophical speech explains why the prize eluded him? We still didn't get an answer for such reaction of your author. At that level, you have to believe that nothing is worse than losing. So if we logically think about that, it seems like your author believed Jan van de Velde must win, but he didn't, and after this speech, philosophical stuffs and so on, your author believes that that's the reason why Van de Velde lost. But what's the hidden reason? What's the assumption towards this reasoning? And the assumption is that your author believed that this Jean van de Velde just didn't care much. Something like that. And that's why seems like the answer must be A. If winning had mattered more to him because of this interview, your author believes the winning didn't matter more to him, Van de Velde would have won. And seems like this is the answer. Let's check others. B. Anyone can win the top tournament if they believe they can do it. No. Your author didn't express such idea because after such passage, and if we need this assumption, this passage must be something motivational, okay? Something like, after I read it, I believe that I also could have won this tournament, but I don't have such feeling, right? You don't have such feeling. Therefore, B is too extreme, first of all, and off topic. Next, nothing in sports is worse than losing. It was already stated, first of all. D. Van de Velde was very unlucky in the last stages of the game. That might be the reason, the actual reason, okay? The actual reason happened. But your author doesn't believe such actual reason. Your author has his or her own idea of the situation where this reason is gonna be the last one to be true for him or her. And finally, Van de Velde should have cared more about losing. Very similar to A, the idea is similar, but Van de Velde must care about winning, not losing, and that should have been a trap. That's why the answer is A. That's it. And remember, the assumption can be sometimes wrong, okay? Sometimes errored, like this. Like maybe the real reason is that Van de Velde just wanted to give proper interview, to be a good person, so on, and the real reason why he lost is is because of this D, like the real reason why he lost. But we don't care about that real reason. We care only about what your author was thinking about that, okay? We care only about author's opinion when we're trying to find author's assumption, okay? And even though the assumption is quite strange, anyway, if that makes sense to explain your author's ideas and conclusions, then that must be your answer. So, if you don't have any questions here, then I guess we can continue. We can continue. So, this one, a little bit harder, but I believe you are able to do that. When you're done, send your answers. I'll give you for that 3 minutes. So, okay. All right. Okay, there is one answer, A or C, but you need to choose. You need to choose between A and C. 1 minute left, guys. Do you need some more time? Maybe for thinking, so on. Answer E. All right. So, time is up. Let's do it together. So drivers found to be committing offenses such as speeding are now offered the choice between paying the police for re-education course or taking the traditional penalty of paying a fine and receiving penalty points on their license. Okay, we have two paths, right? Re-education. So, okay, we have two paths of the situation. It is re-education and paying fine. Pay fine plus penalty points. Okay. It is no surprise that the number of motorists opting for education courses has tripled in 5 years. The question is why? It is no surprise. Your after didn't explain it, right? But the high cost of such courses has led to accusations that police forces might use the new system for their own benefit. You see, here is very little assumption that this education costs us, the money for them is a way more than just to pay fine. Okay? That's a high cost. They could easily set up speed traps, catch a number of motorists slightly over the limit, and generate easy income for themselves. So that's your author's explanation how the police forces could abuse this thing. So the education courses are a good idea in theory, but open to abuse by cash-starved police forces. So the argument is pretty simple, right? We have this situation when someone is speeding, right? Speeding. Okay. Then your people who were speeding have these two choices, re-education or pay fine plus penalty. And people tend to go to re-education. We have no reason why they tend to go there. But this re-education pay is very costly for them, and that's why it can be abused by police forces. It can be abused. So what's the difference? Why people cannot just pay fine, get penalty, and just live as it is? Why it's even a problem? And here is how, here, if you find the explanation for that, you will find the assumption of your author, which explains why people tend to go for education. The reason is that if you just pay fine, like you choose this route, you will also get penalty points to your license, right? To your license. What does it mean if you get penalty points on your license? It means that you at some point can lose your license. So the answer E here, it seems to be the perfect answer. Fear of losing a driving license is greater than fear of financial hardship. That's why they tend to go for these re-education courses even though it needs more money. And that's why they tend to go there, and that's why it can be abused. What about other answers? First, A. The cost of running re-education courses is less than the combined contribution of participants. Well, yeah, but it was, as I said, little assumption. You need to find the main assumption of the argument. Therefore, A is not the answer. B. Re-education is more effective than punishment in preventing further motoring offenses. Your author believes in that, but your author doesn't think. The question wasn't about what in prevention, okay? The question was about how to, I don't know, how to punish those guys who were speeding. That's it. Therefore, B is not the main topic. C. Police forces are more interested in generating income than in preventing motoring offenses. That's too extreme. Memorize that whenever you see too extreme language, like saying that all police forces are more interested in that, it it seems to be a trap for you. Okay, whenever your author uses such language, because it's too much. Maybe there is only a little part of the all police forces who would like to generate money on motorists. And D, the number of driving offenses committed in the last 5 years has tripled. We cannot make this assumption. It's impossible to make this idea based on the argument because maybe there was like usual 100 people going making the speeding, from which it was about 10 and 9 10 going to the education and 90 going to pay fine. But now it is the same 100 people, but now it is 30 going to the education, 70 paying fine. You see? So it does this sentence that people, the number of motorists opting for education has tripled in 5 years, doesn't mean that the driving offenses itself became more. Okay? It wasn't like assumed this way. You cannot assume that. It's impossible because, as I explained, the situation can be like this. So, do you have any questions here? Does it make sense for you?
Can you explain, please, as a sentence where you think that too extreme, or
I didn't get your answer, your
like
question.
when we have to we want to answer for the question, and um in the question, like the answer, we have the word like all, or like two extreme words,
Hmm.
and how to like identify maybe, or
Hmm.
because for me it was very difficult maybe if yeah.
Hmm. So look, it's something like mm, your author was talking about, let's say, simple. Your author was talking about 1 kilogram of apples, but in the answer, it is 100 kilogram of apples.
Mhm.
So whenever you feel something like that, this is too extreme. This is too much, right?
Mm, okay.
So yeah, by the argument, we see clearly that yes, police forces can abuse this system, but your author was not talking about everyone. Your author was talking about
Okay.
a portion of them, while this C answer means that everyone wants to abuse that. So that's when you see too extreme language in the answers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll, by the way, come back to the topic of traps in the answers in the second month. But anyway,
Mm, okay.
just for your knowledge, that
Okay.
if you see the extreme languages, then very likely it's not going to be the answer.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
So, all right then. Then if there is no other questions, then let's continue. Let's continue. So actually, yeah, the answer was E. There is the explanation of that. So, as you can see, these assumptions were not so hard to be found. However, you had to do a lot of mental work to find them. Even after that, you could get wrong answer and find the best one in the answer sheet. So it's okay to have troubles in the beginning. Of course, it will take some time to get used to the new format of the questions and so on. So don't be upset. Just keep training and you will become professional in that after some time. Okay? And in the end of the lesson, I would like to tell you that attendance is very important. Okay? It is very important thing because if you do not attend the lessons, you will not be able to question something. I don't know, to have some time with your teacher and so on. I'm not that bad person after all, right? So please, I'm asking you to be in the lesson 5 minutes before it starts, okay? 5 minutes before it starts, so that I see that you are here, so that you're gonna be there in the lesson, because mm, because I want so, all right? Because anyway, you need to take this NUYET exam very seriously. So I had hundreds of students, guys, hundreds of students like you. And every time when NUYET results are being revealed, there are also guys who didn't succeed. And I don't want you to be in that pool who didn't succeed on NUYET. So if you really want to pass this exam properly, correctly, like with the high results, maybe something like 160 and more, you really need to be there in the lessons. You need to be interested in that. I know that this is summertime and maybe you want to go have some fun with your friends, right? But the the difference between the winners between the winners and those who didn't win, between the losers, okay, is that the winners do the things they don't want to, while the losers doesn't do the things they must do. Keep that idea in your mind every time, and I believe that you will win. Okay? Moreover, remember that New Year might be not in February. It might be in November. So it is mm, more nearly to you than it seems to be. So, all right. I think here we can stop the lesson for now. It was quite many stuffs going on and so on. Anyway, you are only two here right now. And the second part of assumptions will go through on Thursday. And here is a question, really, yes, why not? It really might be on November because there were some plans for that. The new admissions were planning this, so it's not a joke. But still, they still didn't announce it, and I hope that they will announce it maybe in August or maybe in July. But I hope that it won't happen. Anyway, I hope that it will be in February, but there is possibility that it will be in November. Okay? So just remember that. That's why actually we started this course in this summer. So yeah. So all right. And also mathematics lessons are also important. Please be there too. Not only critical thinking, but also there. So do you have any other questions, guys?
No question. But Mr. Russell, can you please explain, like in short, what's the question type of flow?
The flow?
Yeah, flow.
Mm,
Like
yeah.
what?
The flows, you see, we have learned assumptions, right?
Yeah,
And the flows, they're also assumptions.
not really.
Flow is also assumption, but it is wrong one. And in order to answer flow questions, you need to explain why this assumption of your author is wrong. That's the main point.
Hmm. Okay. I got
Yeah.
it. Thanks.
Okay. So you finish the first part of them. As a homework, you will have 15 questions for practice. I will send it in your classroom. And it's completely okay if you don't score high then.
Hmm.
So for now, if you don't have any other questions, it was nice to see you today. Do your homeworks, and if you have any questions, you're always free to ask them in my direct.
Okay.
So, right,
Have a nice day.
okay, goodbye, guys. Have a good day, and see you on Thursday.
Goodbye.
Goodbye, goodbye, Nargis. Okay.